Hello, and welcome to the FarmHouse. I'm Stephanie Spiker.
Wait. That can't be our introduction.
Why not? That is how we always start things out.
True, but it's spooky season, and that means it's time for...
Right. Okay, let me start that again. Hello, and welcome to the Haunted Farmhouse. I'm Stephanie Spiker.
And I'm Candace Wierzbowski. Usually here on the FarmHouse, we interview women in ag. But last year, we made an exception for Halloween. And we wound up having so much fun with it, we decided to do it again this year.
That's right. The Haunted Farmhouse is back with 4 more spine-tingling tales, all of which take place on a farm or a farm-related location. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Let's dive on in.
All right, the first story I have to share is the story of the Bell Witch. It's a relatively well-known story as far as American hauntings go, but since it takes place on a farm, I couldn't pass it up. So, Steph, how familiar are you with haunted house movies? Do you watch them or?
I'm not much of a horror girly. I like spooky season from like the kind of cutesy angle. I like Halloween movies, but I like ones like Hocus Pocus and Halloween Town.
Gotcha. Okay, but I'm sure you are like aware of the genre and kind of like the typical beats. And I'm sure that like you realize that when people are watching these movies, everyone kind of has the same thought at some point, which is, why are these people staying in this house, right?
Yes.
Because that's the one question at the heart of every haunting. How long until you cut and run from a house that clearly does not want you inside of it? So, the farmer and his family involved in the story of the Bell Witch, they never cut and run. Spoiler alert. And we'll see how it works out for them. All right, so this is the story of the Bell Witch and how it terrorized a farming family over the course of 4 years in Tennessee in the early 1800s. The farming couple in this story are John and Lucy Bell. And we're just going to get it out of the way here that when they got married, John was 32 and Lucy was 12. So whether or not you believe in the terrors that are about to unfold, that might be the real horror within this tale.
That is terrifying.
Yes.
I don't like it.
So anyway, John and his child bride Lucy are originally from North Carolina, but they settled in Red River, Tennessee, where they would go on to raise their 6 children. Again, apologies to Lucy. One day in 1817, John is out walking his fields and he sees an odd-looking creature in the middle of a corn row. He claims it had the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit. So, Steph, what do you think he did?
Turn around and run away. Or shoot it. I feel like those are your options.
Yep, he pulled out his weapon and he shoots at it, making it skedaddle. Then he goes inside and gets dinner. But perhaps he had angered the creature because that night after dinner, the family begins to hear loud beating noises from outside their house. They said it was as if someone or something was beating on the walls of their home trying to get in. John and his sons run outside ready to confront whatever it is, but they find nothing. And the sounds have stopped. Until next night. This continues over the next several weeks, but after the first time, things inside the home also start to go sideways. The children are complaining that they're waking up at night to the sounds of mice and rats chewing on their bed, which, fair enough, it's a farmhouse. You might have some rodents. But they also reported that their sheets were being ripped off of them and their pillows flung on the floor. So time goes on and the events begin to escalate. Betsy, the youngest Bell daughter, seems to get the worst of it. Whatever this thing was, it begins to get physical, slapping and beating her. She reportedly had bruises all over herself thanks to this thing. So after a few weeks of this, John confides in his friend, James, about what's been going on in his farmhouse. James is skeptical, but he and his wife agree to visit and spend the night. Not only are the blankets ripped from their bed as they're lying there, this entity begins physically attacking James. So James springs out of bed and he demands the spirit state its name, and James evokes the name of the Lord. And that seems to work because everything goes quiet and stays that way until morning. James and his wife understandably did not stick around. James said...
Smart.
Yeah. James said he could feel it in his gut that whatever this thing was, it was dark. So, all right. Gut check time. Are we sticking around? Have we packed up our things and left the house?
Listen, the second my child had bruises from some ghost entity, I'm out. We're leaving.
Same.
We're staying in a hotel for all I care. We're leaving.
Yeah. I quite frankly don't know if I would have made it through even the first night where it's just knocking on the wall and whatnot. Yeah. Well, John and Lucy and their family, they're sticking it out, and so is the spirit. Over the next couple years, the ghost or demon or whatever it is continues its reign of terror over the Bell family. Eventually, it begins mocking their faith, teasing them with hymns and bits of scripture. So imagine you're sitting down for dinner, and all of a sudden, a disembodied voice starts quoting Leviticus at you. It says, "And ye shall eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters shall ye eat." So that's Leviticus 26:29, and it's supposed to be a warning against what might happen if you break the commandments, and it's probably meant to be hyperbolic, but it would be no doubt terrifying to hear.
Yep.
Out of context and from an unexpected source. So, needless to say, word begins to spread of what's now become known as the Bell Witch. In fact, it travels so wide that Andrew Jackson hears about it. And at the time, he is not yet president. He has just come out of the War of 1812, during which he became a general in the U.S. Army. And at this point, he is unfortunately preoccupied with displacing indigenous people from their land. But he has a connection to the Bell family. 3 of the Bell boys fought under Jackson during the Battle of New Orleans. And as you can imagine, sharing stories of your family's resident poltergeist makes for some good campfire stories. And Jackson's the kind of guy who's always ready for a fight. So when his schedule of war and genocidal displacement clears, he and his men announce that they want to come and visit the Bell farm and its witch. As they approach the property, they have to cross a muddy river. So, Steph, did you ever play Oregon Trail growing up?
Yeah, I would always die.
Yeah, so you know that fording a river on a wagon is always a dicey situation.
Yep.
And it turns out to be just the same for Jackson and company. While crossing, their wagon gets stuck. And as they're struggling to free it, Jackson reportedly yelled, "By the Eternal, boys, it's the Bell Witch!" Within a moment, the group heard what they later claimed was a female voice responding, "Proceed, I shall be with thee yet tonight." The wagon becomes unstuck, and the party proceeds to the Bell property. They set up their tents and camped out for the night. And what a night it was. Men came away claiming they'd felt pins under their skin. Others were beaten, just as poor little Betsy Bell had been. Jackson was stubborn, but eventually the effects of the Bell Witch got to him too, because they left the farm the next day, and Jackson reportedly said later on, "I would rather fight the British at New Orleans than fight the Bell Witch." So what do you think, Steph? Which seems like a scenario you'd rather be in, a haunted campsite or an active battle?
Both sound quite terrible.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like I have never truly experienced like a haunting, and I don't think I want to. Now, I also clearly have not experienced a battle and also don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take my chance with the supernatural rather than the business end of a bayonet, to quote Hamilton.
What a terrible would you rather. Like,
yeah,
neither.
Right.
That sounds terrible.
Well, our story is coming to an end. So by December of 1820, after nearly 4 years of being terrorized by the spirit, John Bell grows gravely ill. He starts to experience twitching episodes and has trouble swallowing and eventually falls into a coma. Which, you know, to me, it kind of sounds like he might have contracted rabies, which is a horror story in and of itself if you're familiar with how that disease works. But after his passing, the family hears the same voice, the one that was singing hymns and quoting scriptures at them, and it tells them that she killed John Bell. So, it's been over 200 years since all that happened, but the Bell farm is still in existence. And the people who have worked there over the years still experience odd things. Disembodied voices, lights turning on and off on their own, unexplainable touches and pushes. It seems like the Bell Witch never really left. That is the end of that story.
Man, she has a vengeance. Like,
she does, that Bell Witch.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to move from one haunted farmhouse to another. So, Candace, would you go to a brewery that has beers named things such as Cryptid Current and Waiting for Ghosts?
I mean, I'd go to a brewery no matter what the beers are named, but I do like the spooky side of things. So yeah.
All right. Well, those are real beers that are on tap at Hidden River Brewing, which is located inside the very old and spooky Brinton Lodge in Berks County, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
So this 300-year-old lodge is now home to a brewery that crafts all its beer on site. It has quite the intriguing and haunted history, which the lodge fully embraces, offering guided ghost tours. And even last year, one of our own reporters, Matt Enright, even took a tour last year and wrote about the lodge and brewery for LancasterFarming.com. So we'll be sure to link his article in the show notes so you can hear his version of the ghost tale. So let's take a little virtual historic ghost tour of our own. The land that the Brinton Lodge is on was initially owned by William Penn himself, good old Billy, before it eventually changed hands to Thomas Millard, who built a very small farmhouse. This little farmhouse passed through several hands and endured a handful of expansions. In the early 1900s, it was bought by the Whitman family. This family had amassed a lot of wealth in the Philadelphia iron industry, so they took this small farmhouse and turned it into a 28-room mansion, which is basically what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately for the Whitmans, not all of them made it out of their mansion alive. In 1911, Catherine Whitman tripped over the hem of her dress while she was on the staircase, and she fell to her death.
Ugh.
Which, falling down the stairs would suck, but, to think of, dying falling down the stairs is awful.
Yeah, it's
spooky.
Yeah.
Later, the Whitmans sold the property in 1927 to a hotelier named Caleb Brinton. He purchased the mansion and turned it into a speakeasy and a brothel. And supposedly, this place was only open to guests that Brinton handpicked himself. Invite only.
Caleb. Okay, I have thoughts. I'll keep them to myself.
Some of his star-studded guests included Elizabeth Taylor and Frank Sinatra.
Ooh.
But it was not all stars and champagne at the Brinton Lodge. One of Brinton's handymen hung himself from the rafters in the building's basement. I don't even know this man's name, but...
Poor guy.
Yeah. Brinton's Gentlemen's Club ran until 1972, which anyone who lives in Pennsylvania might know of a really big thing that happened in 1972, which was when Hurricane Agnes came through. And there was a lot of flooding, a lot of damage, and the building, well, apparently didn't fare so well with the hurricane.
It is right on a river.
Yeah,
so.
A lot of water. So even after the business shut down, Brinton still lived in the mansion, but not for long. In 1974, he suffered a heart attack downstairs in the summer kitchen. His mistress at the time tried to bring him upstairs to die in peace in his own bedroom. But Brinton never made it to his bed, instead dying on the threshold of his room.
So close.
So close. It was also in the 1970s when a British medium visited to perform a paranormal investigation. He did identify paranormal activity. And Candace, I know you're familiar with the Brinton Lodge, so do you know how many ghosts were officially identified in the 70s?
All right. This is going to be a guess. I have been to the Brinton Lodge. I've drank and eaten at Hidden River. It's a lovely spot. I do recommend it. If you don't mind having some maybe uninvited guests.
A little spookiness.
I'm going to go with 28.
Wow.
I don't know. Is it?
I love it.
That's a lot of ghosts.
It's a lot of ghosts. No, the medium in the 70s found 5 ghosts throughout the house. I mean, who knows? That was the 70s.
That's more reasonable.
There could be more. We don't know. But these 5 ghosts specifically have been spotted multiple times all throughout the decades. So one of them is the ghost of Catherine Whitman. That's what people believe. She haunts the staircase in her white dressing gown. And apparently, she's not a huge fan of other women being on the stairs. She's a little possessive of her staircase. There have been many reports of women on the staircase feeling as if they've been pushed. So hold on to the railing, everybody. And it seems the ghost of Brinton himself is still around too. One guest once reported seeing a dead body outside the door of the primary bedroom. The guest when she walked into the room, physically stepped over something, even though nothing was there to the naked eye.
Ooh, creepy.
I know. Other ghost sightings include a little girl who tends to roam the halls of all levels of the building, and an old woman who people believe is Brinton's mother, who spends most of her time on the first floor. But what may be the spookiest ghost of all is one that is only described as the dark shadow. Did you see any shadows while you were there?
No. So we were primarily in the dining room, which, as you might expect, is not really that spooky. It's filled with tables and people eating. But I did use the restroom while I was there. And to get to the restroom, you do have to kind of go through this hallway, and there are rooms off the hallway. And I didn't see any shadows, but it is definitely a creepy vibe as you're walking through there, where it's just like, I really hope these bathrooms are well lit.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the dark shadow is said to be like a very well-formed shadowy figure. Like, it's very clear that this is something. And many guests, many visitors, and the owners of the lodge have all reported seeing this shadow wandering through the lodge. Typically, it's like he's in the hallway and then he goes into another room. When the lodge was open, a guest reported waking up and seeing him at the foot of their bed. So he's apparently been there quite a while. And while the other ghosts are at least somewhat identifiable, it's pretty unclear who this shadow figure is. And obviously, I don't know who it is either, but my hunch is that it's the handyman who hung himself.
Yeah, that would fit.
Still haunting the entirety of this building. But I don't know. I guess we will never truly know who this dark shadow is.
Unless, perhaps, we go to the Brinton Lodge.
Exactly. I mean, I would be up for a spooky beer and a ghost tour.
Yeah, why not? It's interesting. Have you been to the Brinton Lodge before?
No, but
Okay.
I read Matt's article when he went last year, and then I've talked to you about it. I've talked to our podcast producer, Eric, about it, and I'm like, it's on my list. I need to get there.
Yeah, because it's interesting. Because I remember Matt saying that he felt a little unnerved.
Yes.
And
he said he felt cold a lot of places, too.
Yeah. And I know, obviously, I felt unnerved when I was going to the bathroom there. And Eric has talked about his band has played there, and he has talked about how they also felt like there was just something a little off. So there are some weird, it's a weird atmosphere at the Brinton Lodge.
Weird
fun.
energy.
You can have fun there, but yeah. Well, we're going to transition to a story that it's really more of a fable or a parable than the story of an actual haunting. It does have a pretty clear moral lesson at the end, but I think you'll agree that as it unfolds, it's a good fit for our haunted farmhouse. All right, so Steph, have you ever been offered something that seemed a little too good to be true?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, my inbox is full of that every day. Well, this is a story in which a farmer was offered something way too good to be true. Or, one might argue, he was offered something way too convenient to be good. So the farmer in this story, we'll call him Noah. He lives on a cattle farm. It's not important how he acquired the land or how long he's been there, but what is important is that there are two main structures on Noah's land, the farmhouse and the barn. You know, there's some other outbuildings, but those are the two big structures. The farmhouse is a typical farmhouse. It's sturdy and well kept, mostly due to the efforts of Noah's wife, who we'll call Lydia. But while Lydia is house proud and willing to put in the work and resources to keep her home nice, the same cannot be said for Noah and his barn. Noah's barn is a wreck. The roof is sagging. Boards are in need of replacing. Some have become warped and others have completely rotted away, leaving the cold and rain to get in. It's not safe for the cattle, and it's not safe for Noah or anyone else who might be working there. And everyone knows this. Noah's neighbors are talking. They say his barn is an eyesore, that it's unsafe, he ought to be ashamed. And no one is more acutely aware of this than Lydia.
Mm-hmm.
The topic of the barn has become a somewhat unpleasant fixture in their household. Lydia is constantly telling Noah, we need to rebuild the barn. It's awful. It's unsafe. It's the worst barn in the county. But there's a reason Noah hasn't rebuilt the barn. And can you imagine what that might be?
Well, my initial gut reaction is pure laziness. But maybe I'm too cynical.
Well, no, not quite. It's because Noah's cheap. He doesn't want to pay for the barn.
That makes sense.
Yeah, barns, or more specifically, the labor and material needed to build them, are expensive. So Noah just always argues back when Lydia brings it up. Why waste the money? He says, it's just a matter of pride, and what's that worth? Where's the money going to come from? If our neighbors are so upset by the barn, why don't they cough up the money to build a new one? And round it goes. And Noah's stinginess kind of always wins the day, unfortunately. So one fall afternoon, after another round of, for the love of Pete, please rebuild the barn, Noah leaves the farmhouse and goes out to the barn. He's walking around, grumbling to himself about his nagging wife, kicking at a few loose floorboards, when suddenly he hears a voice behind him. It's a man, and he says, "Hey, if you want a new barn but don't want to spend the money, I could help you out." Noah turns and sees a man standing in the opening where the barn door had once been but has now since fallen off its hinges. The first thing he notices is that the man is pale, almost unnaturally so. He's tall and thin, and he's smiling, but the smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. Noah is a little suspicious. He asks who the man is, and the man says, "That's not important. What is important is that you're in a sticky situation here. You've got your wife nagging you. The community is upset with you. Everyone wants you to build a new barn. And you should, but the cost... And Noah is nodding because this guy is singing his tune. He's like, yeah, you're right. I don't even have that kind of money. But his voice kind of dies out because the man gives him a look. And it's the kind of look that pierces straight through him. And Noah realizes that this man knows he's lying. Because Noah could afford a new barn. He's just cheap.
Ooh.
But the man doesn't seem to care about that. He just waves it away and says, "Noah, I can get you a new barn for free. How about it?" But Noah's no fool. He knows that there's no such thing as a free barn. So he asks, "What's the catch?" And Steph, what do you think the catch is going to be?
Give me your soul, your firstborn, one of those.
something big. Well, the stranger just shrugs and says, "It won't cost you anything while you're alive. All you need to do is sign over your soul upon your death, and I'll replace your barn with a new one of the same size tonight." All right, so Steph, if you're Noah in this situation, do you walk away?
Yeah, I'm out of there.
Yeah, we're not messing with this.
Honestly, I feel like if I turned around and even saw this very tall, pasty white, skinny man smiling at me creepily, I'm out. Like, we're not having this conversation.
Well, Noah is still in because he doesn't really believe that a soul is something that you can just sign away. So he's weighing his options. He also knows it's nearly impossible to build a barn in one night. I'm sure some of you have heard of Amish barn raising and how fast that can go, but they can raise a frame and a roof in a day if they have enough people, but finishing a barn still takes more time than that. So Noah's like, all right, there's no way this guy can do all this in one night, and I really don't believe he can take my soul, so what's the downside here? If anything, he and whatever team he has can get the project jump-started, and at least I'll save some money. But he wants to be sure, so he asks, "How big is your crew?" And the man says that he alone will build the barn. And he says he's going to do it between sunset and the first crow of the rooster in the morning. And if he succeeds, then he gets Noah's soul. And Noah has heard enough. He thinks, what have I got to lose? So he agrees and he shakes the man's hand. The man smiles and says he'll begin at sunset. And then he warns Noah to keep his wife inside while he's building the barn because he doesn't want to see her working. And Noah's like, all right, fair enough. So that evening, he tells Lydia the news, or at least some version of it. They're getting a new barn. It'll be completed tonight. Oh, and by the way, don't go outside. So if you're Lydia, how do you react to this?
What the heck, buddy? Like, please elaborate.
Right, I have questions.
Yeah, none of this makes sense.
Well, she has her doubts, but she lets it go because at least this is progress. So she goes about fixing dinner, and by the time they sit down to eat, the sun is setting. All of a sudden, there is a racket coming in the direction of the old barn. There's pounding and sawing and thumps and just a general cacophony of building noises. Noah knows the man said he would be working alone, but there's no way a single person could make all that noise. And this makes him uneasy. He's like, oh my lord, this man might actually be the devil. And I know, it's like, oh, wow, Noah, welcome to the party.
It took you so long.
Right. So as the evening stretches on, Noah becomes more and more upset. Because if the noises are anything to go by, this man, devil or not, is getting things done. Even Lydia seems surprised by how much seems to be happening outside. But she keeps her opinions to herself because, again, she's wanted this barn for a while now. So even though it's not quiet outside, it's quiet between the two of them as they get ready for bed and lay down to sleep. Lydia is able to drift off, but Noah is a wreck. His hands are clammy, he feels sweaty, and his hearts and his thoughts are racing because he's thinking, if this one man can really build a barn in a single night, what does that mean for the rest of our agreement? Does this really mean my soul is actually forfeit? So if you were in Noah's shoes, what would you do right now? Have a big cry.
Yeah, honestly. Nice little sob. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my typical reaction to things anyway.
After the tears, though.
I don't know. Do you go out and try to cancel your deal?
Yeah.
Can you cancel the deal?
I don't know.
Before the rooster crows, can you take it all back?
Yeah. He does have some time. But he doesn't go outside. He lays there kind of tossing and turning, and he winds up staying up almost the entire night. Finally, in the early hours, just before daybreak, Noah can't stand it any longer, and he begins to sob. It wakes Lydia, and she, of course, wants to know what's wrong. And Noah confesses everything. He tells her about the man and the deal, and he tells her that he thinks this man is probably the devil. And all the while, the noises from outside are still going. The barn is still being constructed. And Lydia, as any wife would be, I imagine, is shook. She's like, what have you done? How could you? You could have just spent the money on a new barn like a normal person, and now you've messed up and you're going to lose your soul. And Noah, poor Noah, he's just trembling. He's stuck. He clearly, he cannot get himself together. So Lydia does what any farmer's wife worth her stock would do. She takes charge. Mm-hmm. She gets Noah to recount word for word what he agreed to. So Noah repeats. The devil said he'd build the new barn in a single night between sunset and the first crow of the rooster. And when he was done, my soul would belong to him upon my death. And Lydia stops and thinks for a moment, then gets out of bed and puts on her robe because she has a plan. What do you think her plan is?
Kill the rooster.
Okay.
It
never
can't crow.
Yeah. Okay. So Lydia goes downstairs. She grabs a lantern. She lights it, and then she drapes a scarf over it. Then, carrying it along with her, she runs outside, and it's still dark, but only just. The noises are still going strong as she runs into the chicken coop. Once she's inside, she pulls the scarf off the lantern, it lights up the room, and the rooster starts crowing. Immediately, the noises outside stop. Lydia leaves the coop, and she's just hoping she was fast enough. She sees Noah kind of peeking out the farmhouse door, and together, the two of them head toward what does indeed seem to be a newly built barn in place of where the old one originally stood. Both of them are wondering if they're too late because the barn looks finished. They step inside. The new barn looks wonderful. Everything is built sturdy and fine, and their hearts are sinking. But then they turn and they see it. A single board is missing. One board standing between Noah and eternity. But it's enough. So it's said that the devil was furious that he'd been cheated. Fortunately, he didn't do anything to Noah and Lydia in retaliation because in this story, the devil plays by the rules, even the rules he set himself. But he did allegedly curse the barn, so that could never be completed. Over the years, people would try to patch the missing board, but when they did, they would always find that the new board had been ripped off the next morning, almost violently. Noah and Lydia continued living on the farm for the rest of their lives, and I'm happy to say that not only did Noah learn his lesson about not being quite so stingy, he also had a newfound respect for the cleverness and bravery of his wife. Because women in ag, man.
Man, that was smart. Because I don't actually know if killing the rooster would do anything, because then you could just work forever.
Yeah. The most elaborate barn ever made.
Wow.
Yeah. Good for Lydia.
She had it together.
She knew what she was doing. Farmers' wives and women who farm, they always do.
Oh, yeah.
That's one thing we've learned on this podcast.
They have it fully together.
Yep.
Love it. All right. For our final story, we are going to take a little trip back in time to the early 1800s. So let's put our minds back into this time period. At that point in time, the ag industry really heavily relied on iron to have tools and farm equipment and pretty much a lot of things that farmers used every day. And Pennsylvania was actually a hub for iron furnaces. But one particular furnace has quite the grisly history. So this spooky story I'm about to share of the Colebrook furnace, first of all, it's hard to verify how true it is because there's a lot of furnaces in that area, but I choose to believe it. And it's really never reached far outside of Lebanon County, which is where I live, but it did reach far enough that it was the inspiration for a poem by George Boker titled The Legend of the Hounds. And I feel like I need to give an apology in advance to all of my fellow dog lovers listening. It's a little sad.
Oh, no.
So, in the 1790s, the Colebrook furnace was managed by Samuel Jacobs, which is accurate, according to history. He existed for sure. But according to the poem and legend, he really enjoyed the drink. Yeah. He was not the nicest guy. The poem described him as strong of sinew and dull of mind. And he certainly was not known for being a good boss to all of his workers at the furnace, who often would pretty much just grovel in fear as he barked out orders to them. But what he was known for was his prize pack of hunting hounds, 40 hounds led by a white dog named Flora. Samuel took great pride in these hounds, especially Flora. Flora even saved his life one night. He was drunk, not surprised, got caught out in a snowstorm, and basically was getting absolutely covered in snow and could not get home. Flora broke out of the house, found him partially buried in snow, and dragged him back home to his bed and to safety.
Good girl.
Oh yeah, she was fiercely loyal to Samuel. But unfortunately, you could not always say the same about him. Sometimes he would pet her head as she laid between his feet, but other times he would take out his temper on her. Because he's a piece of crap. Sorry, if you beat a dog, that's how I feel about you. One fall day, Samuel had some friends visiting from the city, and he really wanted to show off to these city people what his prized hounds could do to prove that basically they were the best. But when Samuel and his huntsmen took the pack out to hunt, they were all really sluggish. They weren't really moving. They weren't really doing much. Even Flora. Do you have any idea why they were uninterested?
All right, this is maybe unhinged, but I think that there was something wrong with them. Maybe someone was unfortunately poisoning them, or maybe because he was such, a drunkard, maybe he was giving his dogs some of the alcohol.
Something on the side.
Who knows?
You're on the right track. The rumors are the city dwellers drugged the hounds because they didn't want basically to be shown up. Yeah, your hounds are better than ours. So they drugged them. But even though Samuel's huntsman kind of relayed that to him, what if they drugged them? Something's wrong. He was so determined to basically prove himself to these people that he's no, we're doing the hunt anyway. So they go out in the woods and eventually they do, chase out a fox. But Flora and the hounds were not able to catch it, which is the first time that's ever happened. And Samuel's temper absolutely spiked.
Oh no.
He whipped poor Flora until her white fur shone crimson red. The poem then says, "Just then, the misty autumn air looked darker, for a heavy smoke that rolling from the furnace broke above the woods and waved its plume, portentous of a coming doom." Samuel had a revelation, a way to show these city folks who's actually boss. Basically, he thought since his dogs failed him on a hunt on Earth, he was going to send them to hunt in hell. He led the entire hunting group and the dogs to the furnace, and he ordered his furnace workers to throw the pack in.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. The workers immediately cried out in protest, but unfortunately, their genuine fear of Samuel overtook them, and they did what he ordered, throwing the pack of 40 dogs into the furnace as they howled. Except for Flora. It gets worse.
Oh no. I'm so upset.
I know. It's awful. And I think it's a relatively true story, which is worse. So Flora is very smart. She was able to evade the workers and just completely stay out of the furnace. She cowered back toward her master Samuel, and yet he still ordered his workers to catch her and throw her in. But she barked and she growled and she bared her teeth, and none of the ironworkers even dared to try grabbing her. Suddenly, in all the chaos, Samuel called to her. The anger and fear in her eyes vanished as she looked at him with love and trust. He picked her up as she licked at his face. And then Samuel himself flung her into the furnace.
Oh my. I'm so upset by this.
It's awful.
This is the worst.
As she went into the flames, the workers, the huntsmen, everyone there, and Samuel heard her voice cry out, "God, God, God," and then thunder rolled throughout the entire furnace. Samuel was kind of white as a ghost after that happened. He had to ask all of his workers, did you hear that too? And yeah, everyone heard it. He rode home from the furnace, and he kept turning to look behind him because he had this eerie sense that he was being followed. In the days and the months and the years to come, Samuel reportedly became extremely withdrawn. He no longer entertained friends or anything like that. And every time he'd enter a room, he'd quickly slam shut the door as if to prevent something from following in behind. Every time he sat down, it seemed his feet would be pushed apart just wide enough for a dog to lay. And his drinking just increased with all of this going on.
This does not surprise me.
Yeah. Soon enough, he pretty much was drinking himself to death and was on his deathbed. Suddenly, he sat up, screaming in fear. He said, the poem says, "Here they all come, the hellish pack, pouring from the Colebrook furnace back into the world. Flora heads the whole, whiter than any snow that rolls. They found their prey, and it is I, weak as I am and like to die, who must be hunted." The legend says that Samuel then ran in circles around the room 3 times before suddenly dropping dead. And there are some that say even now that Flora and her pack of hounds still roam around Colebrook to this day. People have reported to hear howls at night, and some people have even claimed to see apparitions of dog packs that just disappear. Now, I will say my parents live in Colebrook. And I asked them if they've ever heard the hounds, and they both said no. But I, every time I'm there, make sure to keep my ears open and my eyes peeled because there might be some dog ghosts running around town.
Good grief, man.
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad the rest of his life was awful. You do something like that and you deserve to have your joy turned to ash.
It's a horrible story, but he got what's coming to him. Like, those dogs haunted him the rest of his life, and he deserved it.
As well they should. Woof. My goodness.
Yeah.
That's a rough one.
It is. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm actually going to my parents for dinner tonight. We'll see if we hear any howling. Report back.
Stay tuned on the FarmHouse. Man, I guess I have a final question for you, Steph, to wrap this all up. Do you believe ghosts are real?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've really ever experienced a ghost. I feel like there are little things that have happened that in my head I'm like, could that have been a ghost?
Yeah.
But I do believe that they are real.
Yeah. I feel like for most of my life, my response to that has always been no, but I'm frightened of them anyway.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like more and more I'm starting to believe. I asked my husband the other day which he thought were more likely to exist, ghosts or aliens. And it's kind of interesting. Like he said aliens, in case any of you are interested. It's kind of interesting, right? Because like we don't really have solid proof of either, but they are kind of like the two things that people are most likely to like say that they're like, yeah, I do believe in that. Or it's, you know, a conversation, I guess, to be had.
Yeah.
And yet I feel like if someone says they believe in aliens, they are seen differently as someone who says they believe in ghosts. It's just kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah.
They carry two separate, not stigmas, but I guess associations.
I will say, in the Brinton Lodge story, the current owner of the lodge talked to our reporter, Matt, when he did the story. And she basically said to him when she bought the property, she's like, everyone told her it was haunted. She's like, I'll believe it when I see it. Like, whatever. And she saw the dark shadow. And now she's like, oh, yeah.
Believer.
Ghosts. They're out there.
Yeah.
So sometimes it just takes, I guess, that one experience.
Yeah, I suppose so.
All right. I hope nobody's too scared. I hope you enjoyed our hauntings and spookiness for the year. And I think it's pretty set that we're gonna do some haunted farmhouse every year for Halloween.
We must.
Yeah.
We must.
But as of now, we're gonna wrap up. But next week we actually have something pretty special planned for the farmhouse. We're gonna leave you in suspense because it's, you know, this is a spooky one. We'll leave you in suspense to figure out what's special about next week's episode.
All right.
And then after that, just so you guys know, we will be taking a little break, and then we will be back again with our normal farmhouse episodes in December.
Thank you all for listening. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And if you really like this episode, and why wouldn't you, please consider leaving us a review.
If you have any questions or thoughts about this episode, or you want to tell us any of your favorite haunting stories, you can email us at farmhouse@lancasterfarming.com.
You can also find us on social media at Lancaster Farming on most platforms.
Thank you again for visiting the Haunted Farmhouse. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Candace.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Episode of The Haunted Farmhouse is copyright 2025 by Lancaster Farming newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family.
It was written by Stephanie Spiker and Candace Werspowski. It was produced by Eric Gerlach. It was mixed by Justin Berger.